match with Michael, which I won't do in a public forum. And secondly, is to say that you want me to, or what I did is try to take the high road and say, I understand the way he feels, I'm sorry for it, but this. And you tell me I'm being creepy and disingenuous. So you can't win. You know, if I attack somebody like that, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And if I try to be calm and understanding of them, you tell me it's fake. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'll just go back and make films, which is something you guys probably don't have the privilege of doing. But, you know, just to be clear, I think Michael and I's issues were purely issues of vision and taste. As people, we never had any huge conflict. And in fact, we had, in my recollection, right up till the end of shooting, a close personal bond, a blood bond. And I even remember visiting him in LA after we'd done the film and seeing him there. And there was something about the fact that there were issues with the re-editing. Maybe people had stirred things with him, that there was bad feeling, and we were no longer in contact, which was a shame. But none of it was personal for me, and I certainly was not and would not now get into some kind of attacking thing, saying, oh, and I think Michael's a good man, and I think he did his best. But it would be like if you said to me, Bey, you're a good man, could you go and dance the lead in Swan Lake? It's just not going to happen. It's not my thing. And I think asking Michael Biehn to direct a martial arts action film in China was wrong. It was not his thing. And that's my fault. It doesn't make him a bad guy. And, you know, I do think since those days, the internet has got worse, not better, in that what sells and the clickbait and what people want to put out is just negative all the time. And that's generally why I don't participate. I don't even do that many of this kind of thing, Sean. It's just, you're a good guy, and I really appreciate the energy you put into it. But generally, it's just so negative.
Well,
and
yeah,
people want
you
to trash. Yeah, people want you to trash. You know, I guess we want to tell you, you know, how fantastic. People expect you to go on and say how amazing you are. In case of Blood Bond, I can just list to you the mistakes I've made and that I think the film is disappointing. And I then will say the steps I took after that to turn something that was negative into something positive. But I don't see anything to be gained by going out and aggressively blaming other people or getting into these kind of, now it's Twitter, you know, Twitter wars. I'm glad I'm of an age now, I'm almost 60, where, you know, I care less. Can I say I give less of a shit?
Yes,
can I say that on your show?
Yes, you can.
I give a lot less of a shit than I used to. When I started out, if somebody would have said to me, you know what, if you take this position, or if you don't do this, you won't have a career, it really would worry me. I mean, I was told in Hong Kong when I first started out, be careful, watch your step. Remember, you're just a white guy. Imagine in America, oh, you're just a black guy, you're just an Indian guy. I mean, you would be run out of town. But I heard that all the time. So when I first started, it was a concern. But then after a few projects, did Medallion, Twins Effect, Crouching Tiger, Lady Blood, whatever the order of them was, working consistently on different interesting films. After get to this point in my life, if somebody said there's an edict, no other white guy can work in Asian cinema, and I have to just write books, that's fine. I've had my run. But if I'd not had that Logan's run, then I think I would.
Nicely done.
I'd care more. I would care more than I do. But I really have no patience for any of this twittering and backing and forwarding. It's like, if you've got so much time on your hands to write something, write a book, why don't you? Write a script, produce something. I think that's the end of my rant about the internet.
Well, I think I'm able to get all the guests that I do and get away with a lot of what I'm able to do because I don't trash stuff on my show ever. Right. In fact, if it is something that I'm not particularly a fan of, I just say that it's not for me. It could be for you. It's not for me. So, but I guess I want to say something to Michael, just so he'll probably never hear it. But I'm going to say something to Michael. This movie is not as bad as you think, sir. What it's not. I watched. Have you heard of the movie came out of Japan not too long ago? Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1.
No, I should see it. I bet my son Ryan's seen it because he sees all that stuff. He introduced me to Versus.
So the big thing about Crazy Samurai was it has an 82-minute, one-take sword fight scene. Okay?
Wow.
Now on paper, yeah, of course. On paper, it sounds like, wow. I can tell you the execution was less than stellar. In fact, there are on some of and this is not to bash it. I think I know too much about what goes into making a movie for me to ever be like something is completely terrible. I think that making a movie in general is a miracle. Like if you get the actress, that's a miracle. You get the camera, that's a miracle. So I think I say it from a different perspective. But sure. Michael. Crazy Samurai came out 4 months ago, and I still think that Shadowguard is better than Crazy Samurai in terms of my particular taste. And then another thing too, I hear you're not the only person that's come on the show and has mentioned a possible rocky relationship on set, and it always is funny to me. I don't know whether you mean
with Michael or with other people?
No, just with other people. And,
okay.
And I always kind of say the same thing. It's mind-blowing to me, and I don't know if it's just because of the life I've lived or whatever life experience I have, but I guess I could see the relationship not continuing after the production if the production was brain surgery and you messed it up, Bey. Like actual brain surgery. Because to me, you're making a movie. We're all just we're pretending.
It's interesting, because I think it's interesting because obviously we'd gone separate ways, but I talked about the film I did the next year, Covert Operation, and the thing is that I've learned a lot from Blood Bond about how not to and how to be a producer of like independent genre cinema. And as it happened, the second film, the one I talked about, Covert Operation, was both financed by and produced and starred a French karate champion called Sidina Balde. But the role was like a foreign, really an American undercover agent who gets stuck in a North Korean bunker. It was like Die Hard in a North Korean bunker. And you know what? In another reality, that could have been me and Michael the second time, and him acting and or even directing with help, or working as an actor for Matthew Veschler and me producing, and that would have been a great experience. It's not like that needed to be the end of the road, but obviously for him, or his feeling was, well, I don't want to work with Bey again and maintain a friendship. That's his prerogative. From my side, it was like, you only really lose if you don't learn anything, and I'm still learning. We had I had a very productive. Surprisingly productive plague year, given the fact that 2020 nobody was meant to do anything. I mentioned that we did Furies in Saigon, and then I also produced a new Bruce Lee documentary for the History Channel, which we shot here. But in both cases, I definitely had not done this kind of film. Furies is very different from the first Fury, and I had not done a documentary. I had not worked with History Channel in my late age as a producer. So even now, at this stage of my career, still learning new things, still figuring stuff out, and you make mistakes, you learn, you move on. And I don't know who said it, maybe it was Bruce Lee, that you only stop learning when they close the coffin lid, right? You keep having to do that. But I look back on the Blood Bond filming experience with distance, with great affection. There were a lot of things happening at that time that were very rewarding and, off screen and on. There were things happening that were a lot of fun, and there was a great sense of community. I think that studio could have been a real center for filmmaking in southern China. But as I mentioned, Henry was a dear, sweet man, was something of a Basil Fawlty figure. And I think that he needed to probably hire somebody with production and creative experience to run. And by the way, I wasn't volunteering for that job, but to find somebody to run the shop and, you know, to kind of manage it day by day and fulfill the potential of the place. But I worked there, but I think I worked there almost more than anybody. And I felt like I had done as much as could be done in that space. So I kind of stopped, because my feeling is when you've done something as good as it can be, as you can do it, rather than to continue in a diminished series of, you know, instances, you're much better stopping and rebooting somewhere else. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely. And actually, there's
like,
something you...
when it's like a party. When the party's been as much as fun as it's going to be, it's time to leave. I felt with Ace that I had done as good work there as was possible for me to do at that space. So you have to move on.
And my fear would be, too, let's just say, you know, the Blood Bond works out and you guys go on to do another film together. My fear would be we don't get to see Fury. You know, we may not get to see, you know, because you go and do other stuff.
It's so interesting. I lie awake at night sometimes deconstructing the pros and cons of my wild and wacky life, but that's absolutely it. Interesting you should mention it, because I did, among the I've got I really want to have the 25th hour of the day, because I got so much going on every day. As I mentioned earlier, I'm writing my big book I did Bruce Lee and I am now writing the second in that series, Jackie Chan and I. So that's almost done. And on my list of books to do is a novel sequel to The Blood Bond, which is called Red Dawn Rising, which was the aim for the sequel that we wanted to do, and that I actually had mooted at one point to do a spin-off or a sequel that was going to be based in Hong Kong, but Blood Bond not performing made it very difficult to get that together. And yeah, it was just, I think it was a really nice script, but I'm going to do it now as a book. Maybe it will be a book that will turn into a movie. But with the Blood Bond, it was really interesting because, of course, there was an enormous sense of freedom to be in the theater of my own mind, to go back to the original script and go, I can now tell the story in novel form exactly as I would like. And it's not a perfect book. It's not a perfect, you know, it's me at my beginning of the process of being a fiction writer in that format. But not having to argue with Michael, not having to debate with actors, not worrying about the weather. Say what?
I said, ladies and gentlemen, he's being humble. I really enjoy the book. You know, obviously, you always you take yourself down a notch when you're the one doing it. But ladies and gentlemen, he's just being.
Well, it's pulp. To me, it's pulp fiction. But I can't tell you. I do remember that. Well, for me, the experience of making Blood Bond was enormously gratifying, and even the whole going to Cannes, I learned some lessons when we couldn't sell the film the first time. Coming back. Really finding out, you know, how kind and generous Henry Look was and Anthony Zito was. They came in and we did all those reshoots and then reselling the film. But I don't have any memory of my mind. Oh, that was a horrible. I remember it was a lot of work, but that was a good experience. And then the film's failure was obviously disappointing. And then going, well, listen, go back and let's do the book to kind of clear that from my slate. This is what the film should have been. And that was enormously gratifying, just sitting down and writing in that form, which I've loved because I'm a voracious reader. But to write in that form and to take the things I like and expand on them. I mean, my own criticism of myself, and I think it may be true of Daughters of Ham, is I still seem to be writing a novelization that I need to let go of the cinematic and the constrictions of doing a script and really expand on the character's inner life and to take detours that you'd never be allowed to do in a script. But when I read the movies, they always feel, the books, I'm sorry, they feel like novelizations. You know what a novelization is, right?
Of course, yes.
I used to love those. I mean, I always used to buy them, like, even for, like, Rocky II, I'd buy the novelization. What was fascinating was that often the adapter who was taking the script to provide the tie-in novelization would work from an early version of the script. So there would be scenes in the novelization that were not in the film. So I always liked those, even though, I mean, most of them were pretty appallingly written. But yeah, so I'm in my own writing trying now as a fiction writer to move